people no longer bound by their non-disclosure agreements. What can you now disclose? My graphic designer best friend won my town's Design the Centennial logo contest. Despite having never set foot in the town. I worked for the radio station. And just did an interview with one of the organizers. Where he lamented that there weren't very many entries. So I called my friend and said, "Want in on this?" He said, "Sure." As he lived on the other side of the country at the time. I spent the next day texting him photos of the town for inspiration. Anyway, when he won, and they found out he was a professional graphic designer who lived on the other side of the country. They made him and me sign NDAs, because the town was afraid people would think they brought in a ringer. Edit. Wow. This kind of blew up. So let me answer some of the more common questions being brought up. 1. What's a ringer? A ringer is professional who's brought into a contest in order to guarantee favored results. 2. Why did I have to sign the NDA? Well, they unveiled the logo at a great big ceremony where they presented the prize money. I think it was a couple $100. And since my friend lived on the other side of the country, he asked if I could accept on his behalf. I wound up not going. Because we were broadcasting from another event that day. So the mayor accepted on his behalf. 3. Where is this? Canada. A small town in Alberta. That's all I'm comfortable sharing. How did they make you? They threatened to withhold the prize and you threatened to tell the public. Which would be way worse PR wise than what their loan wanted the NDA for. Presumably if they didn't sign the NDA, they wouldn't have picked the design. I was a contractor for NASA. I still fully support the agency. But I was extremely bugged when I learned that each separate NASA center, e.g. JPL, Kennedy, American Englishes, Goddard, hides many of its inventions and breakthroughs from the other centers so that when HQ is ready to assign a big mission and a lot of dollars to one center, they have a better chance to compete over the others. Look what we invented. American Englishes can't do this over there. Give us the next moon orbiter. The downside is that there is a ton of reinvention and duplicated efforts going on. Sometimes years of work go down the drain when another center does the same thing faster. My perspective was, you all work for NASA. Share knowledge. Collaborate. I was frequently ordered to tone down anything revealing when speaking to other centers. That's not at all different from how the big national labs used to work. The rivalry between Lawrence Livermore and Los Alamos is almost legendary. Supposedly they got better about sharing, but it wouldn't shock me if they were still up to the same hijinks. I dug up some ancient bones, gold, and Mycenaean tombs. I couldn't discuss the finds until the institution who ran the archaeological dig could publish the data. You can read about it here. Link. Edit to add. I'm a classics student, not the one running the whole dig. But my role in it was very much legal and official lol. We knew to dig there because there was another tomb next to it. And it's located near a big Mycenaean Bronze Age palace. I only dug there for one summer, but it was a blast. If you're interested in archaeology, you should see if there are any local groups that you can volunteer with. I used to do data analysis of revenue management for some big companies. Many companies have no clue about their data or their revenue streams. I'm talking several $1 million of revenue disappearing in the pipeline and no one knowing what happened with it. Or even caring really. There were multiple times I had to inform clients that we had huge gaps in their costs and we needed to find the missing numbers somewhere in order to make our final reports correct, and was met with the paraphrased reply. Just sprinkle the missing costs over the existing one. We just want the final total to be correct. All the companies cared about if the amount of money they have at the end of the year is higher than at the beginning, and anything that happens in between is inconsequential. I objected at first to my bosses, saying that what we were doing was incorrect. But they said to just do as the client said. In the end, I got disillusioned, and whenever our clients came with requests that made no mathematical or logical sense, I'd just execute as requested and let their analysts figure out later that the analysis they paid 6 figures for was basically nonsense. I didn't care. Because I had documentation of all their requests and my objections which were thoroughly ignored. I had a few cases where clients came back disgruntled several months down the line after some in-house analyst had done a deep dive of their data and came up with objections that I had pointed out months before. I'd usually dig up the relevant emails and clear my name. My choice of action was to tell them to pound sand. But my bosses always bent over backwards for clients. So we'd have to do the cleanup I anticipated. In the end I learned most of our economy is held together by duct tape and wishful thinking. At most 10% of people working at big companies are competent and carry the bulk of the work, and rarely are the competent ones the ones in charge. Edit. I want to clarify something for everyone who's talking about embezzlement and people lining their pockets. I can assure you that in the data I was working on, this was very unlikely. The money streams I was analyzing went to other companies as costs. So if they had literally disappeared, someone would notice. This missing money was really just a case of utter incompetence. People just too lazy or stupid to properly keep track of what goes where. I'm sure that if we got all the data from partnering companies, we would eventually be able to track everything precisely. We were unfortunately limited to whatever data our clients provided, and we would rarely get data from other companies as they're quite privy about sharing it with third parties. This rant was not about corruption but rather incompetence. This should be higher up the list. It's scary how incompetent people just guffaw their way into positions of power and really have no idea how to run a business. I mean, to be fair, I'm talking some really big companies here. One of our clients was Coca-Cola, for example. I'm not afraid to mention them as they were one of the few clients that really had their shit together. Their data was usually pretty on point and they were extremely thorough. These big name companies make bank, but many of them had absolutely no clue where that bank was coming from. The key account managers just cared that their totals were good. Individual revenue streams didn't matter as long as in the end the sum total was fine. Same in some big insurance company. Several millions of euro that are asked to be ignored when it comes to analysis and reporting. You know NDAs are only good if you have the money to sue. Worked with a company that didn't pay me. So I told them their NDA didn't apply. They threatened to sue. My response: you can't even afford to pay me. You sure as hell can't afford to sue. They also don't extend to keeping you from reporting illegal activity to the justice system. Some places may try to make people believe that and may even try to imply it in the NDA. But it has no legal standing. Doesn't illegal content in legal contracts immediately void the entire contract? When I was fired from Auntie Anne's in 2010, I signed a 10-year non-compete/NDA contract, promising not to detail the baking secrets or work for another pretzel establishment. Well, that ended this year, so now I can run out and start a pretzel store because the secret I was keeping was making pretzels literally requires 2 products. One of them being water and the other a large bag of pretzel meal/dust/powder. Quite literally anyone with $2,500 can start a pretzel stand and make perfectly fine pretzels. It's not difficult whatsoever. Edit. I signed the letter when I was hired, but I got a copy with my termination letter. Well, you forgot to say what the secret browning agent is that all the pretzels get dipped into before they go on the sheet and into the oven. It's baking soda and water. Mystery solved. Also lemonade too. 4. 8. Refrigerate. I think I'm finally ready to let the world know my secret. If you've ever used VeriSite, the loading spinners you see when the report loads aren't waiting for anything. People kept complaining that reports were coming back too fast. So it must not be working right. It doesn't take long to complete a few hundred Google searches simultaneously. So the loading spinner just makes you wait a few seconds longer, so it feels like more is happening. So glad to finally get that off my chest. Bonus fact, edit. I also added applying phlebotinum reticulating splines. and looking for cat memes as random loading messages. But they wouldn't let me do harassing at TEDCRUZ on Twitter. This is a good one. Now we just need an elevator engineer to admit that the close door button doesn't actually do anything. To be blackballed by big elevator. You'll never see that. I worked at a small bakery in New York City when I was younger. Every morning the bakery would take their day-old cupcakes and deliver them to a tour company that did Sex and the City tours. The tour company would pass our cupcakes off as cupcakes from Magnolia, and significantly much more popular bakery. I went on that tour with my ex-wife and ate one of those cupcakes. Edit. The cupcake was pretty disappointing. Definitely tasted stale. After the cupcake, the tour took us to some swanky little underground bar where they fed us cosmopolitan martinis, and then it ended at a dildo store. They set us up for a good time. Is that why she's an ex-wife? The owner of the company is an absolute psycho. They have been trying to hire developers for years now, and despite paying really well, they can't keep them. I quit after 3 days. I was trying to help out on a high priority bug on my 3rd day, when I said all the requests to X endpoint are failing, to which he replied, I see 1 out of 500 requests succeeding. Does that sound like all to you? He then called a company-wide all-hands meeting and proceeded to tell everyone how important it is that we all speak carefully, and that we don't need fucking retards like me lying to the company making it harder to diagnose issues. I told him to go fuck himself and quit on the spot. Turns out the company has a big history of this. My boss, who had been there for 2 weeks, had tried to quit the week prior, but was convinced to stay on to meet me. He left a few days after me. Apparently a few people got together and tried to tell the owner that he needs to watch how he talks to people, and he blew up on them about it too. I later heard that I was something like the 10th person to quit within their first month in a row. The sad truth is that the dude actually seems pretty smart, but has been acting like a megalomaniac while he pisses his money away and abuses his employees that are for whatever reason unwilling to leave. This is juicy. I like this one. Oh, I forgot one other part of this story that makes it really funny. They offered a quitting bonus thing since they were having so much trouble even getting people in the door for interviews due to a ton of bad company reviews. They had in the contract that you would be able to get a few thousand if you left and weren't fired within the first 90 days. Apparently it was the owner's idea. Well, when I told the owner to fuck off, I quickly sent an email announcing my resignation, to which he replied all saying, let's have a phone conversation about this. It would be highly premature for you to leave on your 3rd day. I declined. The quitting bonus was contingent on signing a non-disparagement agreement. A few days after I left, I get an email from the owner's right-hand man sending me a link to an ex-company Facebook group where past employees go to network or something. I had no interest in that, so I declined. But I'm convinced that it was an attempt to get me to break my non-disparagement agreement. If I joined the group and talked shit about the company, he would try to sue for the quitting bonus back. I don't know for sure that's what it was, but it just stinks of that nutjob trying to be clever. Also, that quitting bonus is no longer offered on their recruiting page. Star Wars Battlefront 2 EA will have microtransactions. The NDA was signed in 2016. I was getting more and more worried as the release date kept getting closer, and then it happened. The backlash was so strong that EA went down in the history books as most downvoted comment in Reddit's history. Any more details you can dish out about this? I remember when this all came to a head. Like back then, the build of the game I saw wasn't even a game. Everything was in PDF and in the planning stage of development. So I can confirm that the star cards and the whole BS progression system was planned for day 1. Also, Finn and Phasma were fully developed and playable as early as June 2017. McDonald's made me sign a NDA regarding a robbery that took place during a graveyard shift. They made me take a fucking polygraph test because they thought my ex and I were involved due to the simple fact that I had stopped by that day to pick up some documents. I was a manager. I had business to do. Fuck you. McMidder. Edit. Thanks for the silver. 3 asterisk. Edit 2. There are many questions. Some wonder if I made this up. Request details or explanations. I'll give some extra context and I'll head out. Asterisk. I was around 19 to 20 years old. This was almost a decade ago. I was pretty naive then. By the time I realized this might have been illegal, I mentioned to a co-manager and she advised me to not bring it up again as to not involve myself in trouble or damage my future job prospects. I worked at a franchise located in a rural area with an almost entire Latino population, where everyone knows each other. I took home some of the weekly schedules and production projections for highlighting. They would make me do this highlighting shit weekly. The store manager asterisk in charge would allow me to do this on a weekly basis. The area supervisor asterisk called to tell me I'd have to take a polygraph test. He mentioned that I could decline taking the polygraph test, but I'd be taken off the schedule and I wouldn't be trusted again. The police showed up to the restaurant, picked me up, held me at the investigation building for around 8 hours, and then they sent me home. When asterisk I passed the polygraph test, the area supervisor called again to mention that he appreciated that I took the polygraph. Glad to hear I passed, and that he would always have my back. I roll. I left the job at McDonald's in 2014. At least it makes for a story to tell. Hell. The first day of my first job was at a Hardee's. We were robbed. It was really obvious my manager had set it up as there was over $1,000 in my register and she wouldn't swap out the till. Then when the robber was running off she yells out, "Wait. You forgot this," and gets the $50 and $100 bills from under the drawer. Then pretended to faint. After the police interviewed us they just left. She expected me to finish my shift and I just laughed and walked out never to return. Bruh, what the fuck? That seems almost surreal to me. No way she got away with that, did she? I had to sign an NDA to work at this tech company. And I'm still waiting to accidentally overhear something cool so I can feel special for knowing something important but being legally barred from disclosing it. Pro tip. 99% of the other people there are in the same boat. Start talking loudly on the phone. Or in a stage whisper with a colleague after overtly double checking, hey, you signed the NDA right? And you can at least make everyone else feel special. Well, the data screw up was just another packaged library issue. They've reverted it now. But you can't roll back whatever's in the wind already. So did the NSA say anything about the strange numbers you were seeing? What do you mean, plead the fifth? Sure, it runs faster now. But aren't you a little worried about the radiation? Having signed NDAs and held security clearances, I can say that the information that was actually protected for me ended up being very boring for normal people, but very important to competitors who are hoping for that slight edge. I worked at a gym, and in the showers there was yellow shampoo and blue body wash and pump dispensers. I found out that the only difference between the two soaps was the color. Edit. Memory joggers, it was 25 plus years ago. Hand soap was blue. Body wash was green. Shampoo was yellow. All the same. Edit 2. As funny as the replies are, it wasn't an NDA about soap. It was just a generic employment NDA to protect the privacy of members and business affairs of the gym. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You use the yellow shampoo, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You use the blue body wash, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. As someone learning to make soap, it's hilarious that in the industry, recipes are protected as trade secrets, but there's literally only so many ways you can make soap. I had a similar thing. Not NDA bound. But everyone in our office building thought the soap was bronze. Until I saw a cleaner filling the dispensers with white soap. Turns out the stainless steel dispensers were rusting from the inside out. So the soap was full of rust. Eater linked a video of cleaning the dispenser link. The soap was full of rust. *FORTIFIED with iron. In the IT world, it is often that the piece of internal software or system that gives your company an edge is not quite as huge a deal as it seems. Often it is not much more than a couple of technologies mashed together to automate things in a way nobody else is doing yet. And those things are fiercely guarded. I had cases where people saw stuff in action and tried to replicate it, but could not because they were missing just one small piece. A couple of technologies mashed together to automate things. You've just described the whole software engineering. And it's not a bad thing. Actually.